Hello, Michelle.
Hi, Jill. How are you
Doing well.
doing? Where are you originally from?
I am originally, well, I live in the state of Wisconsin.
And you live in Wisconsin now too.
Right, I live in Wisconsin and I teach at Loyola University Chicago, and I come here to the Newseum to help them with this very important Powershift project.
Great. Can I tell me a little bit about your educational background and career?
Sure. Well, I started out as a reporter and an anchor, and at a very early age, many years ago, became a broadcast news director. I ran a television newsroom for the better part of 20 years, and then I joined the Poynter Institute, where I headed up the leadership and management programs there. And now I'm at Loyola University Chicago. I've done a book on leadership and management called Work Happy, What Great Bosses Know, a podcast. And I teach in newsrooms around the country, and I also help the young journalists of the future.
I saw that you're an expert on bosses.
Yeah. Oh, go right ahead.
What are some traits that make a good boss?
Well, here's what I always tell people. The most important thing leaders do is help other people succeed. So if you have a belief that your boss is out to help you grow and do better, that's the trait that you want. I also teach people that life's too short to work with jerks. And if your boss isn't a jerk and doesn't hire jerks and doesn't allow them to grow in your organization, you're going to have a much more successful career.
Well, what makes a bad boss or a jerky boss in your opinion?
It's a person who does not communicate well, does not foster collaboration, either exacerbates conflict resolution or ignores conflict in the workplace, and certainly one who doesn't think that sexual harassment is a problem, either refuses to accept it or thinks it's something that you just have to, really doesn't fight it, or thinks it's just something that you have to tolerate as the price of doing business. That's a bad boss.
That sounds like one to me. Now, how does the Me Too movement affect the workplace?
Well, you know, it's interesting. What we have discovered when these cases erupted last year, whether it was Harvey Weinstein or whether it was Matt Lauer or Charlie Rose, we thought, how could this all be going on when we thought everything was okay? And what it turns out is that if you look at the government statistics, 60% of women surveyed will tell you that they've experienced some form of sexual harassment. But most of them were really too concerned about their own career to bring it up. It had to be so bad that it almost rose to the level of crime for somebody to bring it up. So there was a conspiracy of silence that kept these things quiet. And now we know it can't be quiet anymore.
What do you think the next step is in the Me Too movement?
I think the next step, first of all, it's a change. We've got something called the Powershift Project here, and it's a shift in power. It is now that people are going to be believed. We recognize now that it isn't just somebody who's overly sensitive talking about something that caused a problem in the workplace. They're not overly sensitive. They're people who've been harassed. We are now training younger people. This is one thing that the Newseum is doing tomorrow, in fact, Friday, March 2nd. We are doing a live stream program here at 1 p.m. Eastern Time called Power to the Interns, because we now know that interns are among the most vulnerable people, interns and temps and people who are freelance, who don't really feel like they've got a lot of job security. And so they may be the last people who want to bring up a problem that they're experiencing or witnessing. Well, the program that we're doing will not only be live, directed at universities, at employers and students, but it will be archived, all the videos archived on the Newseum site, so anyone can use them free of charge to be able to train at their school or at their workplace.
Now, what is the Newseum?
The Newseum is this beautiful, beautiful museum of news in Washington, D.C. People come here with their families to see the history of news. And, you know, because this place cares so much, the Newseum cares so much about journalism, it took the very serious step of saying, we're not just going to read about the problem of sexual harassment in media and in society, we're going to do something about it. So come here, learn about journalism, but pay attention to the programs that we're also doing online and free of charge for people who want to make a difference in their workplace.
Now, what is the Powershift Project?
The Powershift Project is the dedicated resources of the Newseum here in Washington, D.C. that is going to do a series of trainings. They've asked me to come on board, as I have, as a fellow in women's leadership, because I teach management, to work with newsrooms around the world, also to help put together the training programs like the one that I just mentioned. And then I'm also going out into many other organizations and helping them train their own people to do a better job of talking about sexual harassment. In fact, talking about the fact that incivility in the workplace, screaming at people, is the sort of the gateway to the other things that are going to happen. If you think somebody can get away with treating you as less than a person, then sexual harassment can follow it. And you can't just say, well, I scream at you, but I get over it, or come here, give me a hug. People don't want the screaming and they don't want the hug.
What is the survey that you project?
Well, what we did was in January of this year, we brought 130 media leaders together here, what was called the Powershift Summit. And they were media leaders, they were victims, they were some of the top executives in the industry who've had to deal with the scandals in their organization, whether it was CBS or NBC or NPR or any of the public radio stations where people have lost their jobs. They were all here. And we also had victims here. We had people from the National Women's Law Center and from the EEOC. And from that summit came a report that basically was a call to action. It said sexual harassment is real. It is generally the product of an imbalance of power. It's completely tied up with discrimination, and incivility is the gateway to it.
Now, along these lines, because also there's still media involved, do you believe all media is biased?
Do I believe all media is biased? First of all, let's separate out what we mean by media. You know, people lump everything together. It can be an organization that has a point of view, like a magazine that has a point of view, or a cable news show that has a point of view. And then there are organizations that try to play it straight down the middle. And no, I don't think they are biased. And I know the journalism students that I'm teaching, we're teaching about the importance of accuracy, of fairness, and of context. But today, people lump everybody together, so if they don't like what they hear on Fox News, or if they don't like what they hear on MSNBC, which tend to have some programs that have partisans on them, then they say all the media is biased. So I don't think the media is biased. I think we self-select many times to support our own biases, and I think all of us need a more balanced diet.
Now, what do you think is next for the Me Too movement?
The Me Too movement is a power shift. I think that women are now being believed. They're being encouraged to speak up. I think organizations are taking it seriously. I think that good men are standing up on behalf of women who they don't want to see abused in the workplace either. And we're giving people the language and the tools to make a difference. And I am so proud that the Newseum here in Washington, D.C., and my own university, Loyola in Chicago, are partnering to work on this effort and to make tools and resources available.
Why do you think so many victims stay silent for so long?
Oh, that's such a good question. I think that people felt that they wouldn't be believed. You know, it's my word against his. He's a powerful person. I don't know if HR will take me seriously, so I'll be part of a whisper network, and I'll tell other women what's going on, and we'll tell each other who to avoid, but we didn't tell the right people because of systemic fear. And I think the other thing is that, and I'm going to say this for myself as a manager, somebody who ran a newsroom, we followed the law. We were trained to apply the standard of the law, which was a pretty high standard. You know, that was a quid pro quo. It would be something like, you know, Michelle, if you don't sleep with me, you'll lose your job. But not all the harassment went to that level. It went to the daily inappropriate touching, inappropriate language, and it may have caused women and people of color who had less power to say, you know what, I'm going to opt out of this. And it can explain why, after all of these years, we still don't have sufficient women in positions of power, people of color in positions of power, because they may have opted out because of that harassment, discrimination, and incivility.
Now, many people have been accused of sexual harassment lately, but there haven't been too many arrests or criminal activity. So, when it comes to the future of this movement, is it possible for people who were sexual harassers, you know, for criminal activity and then fireable activity, and then there's will continue
Right.
What should happen to people who realize, oh my gosh, they're making people uncomfortable
You know,
or doing it?
well, that's such a good point because times have changed. What people's beliefs are appropriate in the workplace has changed. A lot of that has had to do with the introduction of women in positions of power. I ran a different newsroom than some of my predecessors did. You know, I ran a newsroom where people brought their kids into work and they didn't necessarily bring their dirty pictures into work, right? But not every newsroom is like that. And so what's happening now is if you feel that, hey, I wonder if I did say something, I wonder if I'm a person who may have crossed that line, there's nothing wrong with saying, I just want to tell you what I stand for now. And I stand for standing up for you if you feel that you've been harassed. And I think that that's really important. This isn't an indictment of men. There are many, many good men. I can tell you that my career was nurtured by men who wanted to see people succeed and people who loved their spouses and partners and didn't prey on women in the newsroom. But they too care about making sure that those who thought that it was okay to be called a ladies' man or to be called handsy. Don't you love that term, handsy? What does that mean? A person who touches you without you wanting it, right? And so what I've said at the summit was, every time you hear the word handsy, try the word molesty instead. And if we use that word, maybe people would take it a little more seriously.
I think they might.
Yeah.
Where can people learn this? Where can people learn more information?
Well, the Newseum has a website now on it's got pages on its site that will allow people to come on. They can get the report, they can get free training materials. So let me give you that address. It is Newseum, so like the word museum, but it starts with an N, newseum.org/Powershift Project. And let me repeat it, newseum.org/Powershift Project. You'll be able to download videos if you want to use them for training in your own team. Because we know lots of small organizations, they don't have HR departments, and they're trying their best, but they need help. And so the Newseum is here to help.
Now, how do you like people to connect with you personally?
Well, you can connect with me through the Newseum, or you can reach me at jgeisler@luc.edu. That's my Loyola University Chicago address.
Is there anything else you'd like to add?
I would like to add that I so appreciate you having this conversation. The more that we talk about this, the more it becomes real and the more the problem is going to go away. And our youngest journalists, our youngest employees are going to have what I call workplace integrity. And that means an environment that's free of harassment and discrimination and filled with opportunity.
That sounds wonderful. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
So I let her go a little bit over because it was a good conversation and we had the time, so why not? So then we're back at 55. So just a good 12 minutes break if you need anything you want to
Okay.
discuss.
I think I'm good.